You want to already?
That's crazy. Yeah.
We'll go ahead and get started. First of all, I just want to thank you for coming out. Look forward for a very informative discussion as we move forward. So hang tight a few more minutes and we'll get started. Thank you.
This is me, right? Okay.
I know how to do it.
Yeah, I'm good. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. I know we're still waiting a few more minutes, but I know my colleagues up here, their schedule is limited as well. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. First of all, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Assembly Select Committee's informational hearing on the subject of student safety and internet crimes. This hearing came to me as a result from a tour I had with Fontana Police Department's Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. I was shocked about the ongoing internet crimes that occurred in my district, and I became greatly concerned for my grandchildren and for all the other children of our community. Today, we'll be hearing from local law enforcement and school districts whose testimonies will explain the current resources and campaigns that aim to ensure our children's safety against internet threats. As a result, the legislature will be in a better position to address any issues or obstacles that law enforcement and school districts face in combating internet crime. If future legislation is needed to resolve any issues, we would continue to collaborate with law enforcement and school districts. There will be an opportunity for public comment at the end of the hearing. Thank you for coming to this afternoon, and I look forward to a strong discussion. At this time, I want to turn it over to my colleagues up here in the dais. If they want to say a few words before we get started, feel free.
I just want to thank you for inviting me, Assemblymember, and I look forward to the panels and what they have to say and improving as we move forward.
I'd also like to thank Assemblymember Rodriguez for hosting this select committee hearing. In real life, I'm a computer engineer and a video game developer, so I know a lot about the way that technology interacts with education and the things that students can benefit from, and also the things that put students at risk. But I'm also a father of 2 teenage sons, and I can tell you I've been really alarmed at the sophistication with which our children are targeted. So I think this is a very timely topic, and I'm looking forward to joining the discussion.
And with that said, to my colleagues real quick, let's please hold any questions till the end of each panel. And with that, I want to thank the City of Pomona for allowing us to have the opportunity to be here. And with that, I want to recognize our Mayor, Tim Sandoval, if you want to say a few words before we get started. Mayor?
I just want to welcome everyone and thank you, Assemblymember Rodriguez, for bringing me here. And if there's anything we can do for you while you're here, please let us know. So, thank you again.
Thank you once again. And with that, first up, we have representatives from Cal Poly Pomona and the Fontana Police Department. At this time, I would like to welcome up Dr. Daniel Manson, Professor in Computer Informational Systems for Cal Poly Pomona, Jeremy Hale from the Fontana Police Department, and Keith Zeg, hopefully I don't pronounce or mispronounce, Zepkorian, Sergeant from the Fontana Police Department. Dr. Manson, I look forward to hearing your assessment on cybersecurity and internet crimes from a higher education perspective. And for our Fontana PD representatives, I'm eager to hear your testimony on the work of the Internet Crimes Task Force. With that said, Dr. Manson, the mic is yours.
Thank you for the opportunity to be part of this informational hearing. Jessica was kind enough to give me some questions to address, so I'll be going through those questions and some of my additional thoughts for you today. What are the current statistics on internet crimes committed against children across the nation and in the state? The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's Cyber Tip Line receives reports regarding child sexual exploitation, including sextortion. Sextortion is a relatively new form of sexual exploitation that occurs primarily online and in which non-physical forms of coercion are utilized, such as blackmail, to acquire sexual content, photos, videos of the children, obtain money from the child, or engage in sex with the child. Since the Cyber Tip Line began tracking sextortion in October 2013, these reports have been on the rise. In just the first 2 full years, between 2014 and 2015, there's a 90% increase in the total number of reports, a pattern that has continued, with sextortion reports up 150% within the first several months of 2016, compared to the number of reports in the same time frame in 2014. 78% of the reports involve female children and 15% involve male children. Male and female children each range in age from 8 to 17 years old and had an average age of 15. However, compared to female children, it was less common for male children to be on the younger end of the spectrum. In 24% of the reports, Reporters mentioned that they suspected or knew that additional children were being targeted by the same offender. From these crimes, which crimes occur the most? Based on the information that was indicated or known when the cyber tip line report was made, offenders appeared to have committed sextortion with one of three primary objectives. In 2% of these reports, multiple objectives were indicated. In 11% of reports, the objective could not be determined. 1, to acquire increasingly more explicit sexual content, photos, videos of the child. That was 78%. Female children were blackmailed significantly more often for sexually explicit content, 84%, compared to male children, 53%. When sexually explicit content was the apparent objective, offenders commonly escalated in their demands, both in the quantity of images and videos and or in the levels of aggressiveness. It was not uncommon for children to believe that complying would make the blackmail stop. In some extreme instances, reports indicated that the sextortion had escalated to the child being blackmailed for videos of a certain length while performing specific sexually explicit behaviors, and sometimes for the child to even include other children, such as siblings or peers, in the images and videos. Second reason was to obtain money or goods from the child, 7%, and male children were blackmailed significantly more for money or goods, 32%, compared to female children, 2%. 3, to have sex with child, 5%. There are no statistically significant difference between male, 3%, and female, 5%, in the rate they were blackmailed to meet for sex. In contrast to the majority of sextortion reports made to the cyber tip line, when sex was the apparent objectives, there is more commonly an indicator in the report that the offender might be someone that the child knows in person, such as an ex-boyfriend or other individual in their community. However, when this was not the case and the offender seemed to want anonymity, demanding sex appeared to be a ploy to achieve their real objective of acquiring sexually explicit content. In these reports, the offender first demanded sex and subsequently demanded content instead, likely as a way to make their second demand appear as a relatively more desirable option and increase the chances of compliance. As technology expands at a rapid rate, what are the evolving forms of enticement that predators use to lure children onto the internet? The Crimes Against Children Research Center, Trends in Unwanted Online Experiences and Sexting, states the following. Unwanted sexual solicitations have actually declined from 19% in 2000 to 13% in 2005 to 9% in 2010. On the other hand, online harassment has increased from 6% in 2000 to 9% in 2005 and 11% in 2010. It's my opinion that online harassment is also growing since then as well, and I think that this is a serious problem that needs to be addressed in the schools and also through better communication between parents and their children. Please provide recommendations which you have formed through your expertise on this matter on how parents and children can prevent and identify potential internet crimes while surfing the web. Communication and awareness are two of the most important ways to prevent and identify potential internet crimes while surfing the web. Parents need to understand the online world is just as important to children as the physical world. Online safety is just as important as physical safety. Children need education about safety in the online world as much as in the physical world. Schools need to teach online safety as much as physical safety. Parents and children need to be able to understand and communicate with each other about safety in the online world as much as in the physical world. Do you have any recommendations on courses of action that school districts should implement to further protect children from internet threats? Every school needs to teach online safety. Every school needs to promote National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. At Cal Poly Pomona, we have had a cybersecurity fair for Cybersecurity Awareness Month for the past 13 years. This is a very important event that we put on at our university. October is National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, which is an annual campaign to raise awareness about the importance of cybersecurity. The internet touches almost all aspects of everyone's daily life, whether we realize it or not. The National Cybersecurity Awareness Month is designed to engage and educate public and private sector partners through events and initiatives to raise awareness about the importance of cybersecurity, provide them with tools and resources needed to stay safe online, and increase the resiliency of the nation in the event of a cyber incident. Finally, every high school and middle school should promote cybersecurity awareness through Cyber Patriot and related cybersecurity competitions. This is an area that I've been involved with for the past 10 years, and I believe that these competitions, learning cybersecurity through competitions, is just as important as learning physical skills through athletic competitions. Cyber Patriot is the National Youth Cyber Education Program created by the Air Force Association to inspire K-12 students toward careers in cybersecurity or other science, technology, engineering, and mathematics STEM disciplines critical to our nation's future. For the 2017-2018 season, over 5,500 teams registered for the Cyber Patriot National Youth Cyber Defense Competition. Over 1,000 teams in California are registered for Cyber Patriot for 2017-2018. This weekend is round one for Cyber Patriot. I hope that all of you take time to learn and become involved with the Cyber Patriot competition and the National Youth Cyber Education Program. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Manson. And with that, we'll hear from representatives from Fontana Police Department. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm registrants. Oh, thank you. We have two forensic technicians that work with us. One, actually, two are on scene, and then we have a third individual that works at the FBI Crime Lab in Ontario. We also have a crime analyst. Our internet crimes against children, we're affiliated with LAPD's ICAC unit. It's the ICAC task force is nationwide. There's approximately 61 separate task force across the nation with over 3,500 law enforcement personnel working together to try and combat this, where we share information and also hand off investigations. Just to go into a couple just normal statistics in regards to our victims. Most of our victims in regards to child pornography, which is being distributed, 78% of those children are under the age of 12 years old. 63% of the overall are under the age of 8 years old. 18% are generally produced by a parent or a guardian. 25% are generated from family members or neighbors, and 18% stem from online enticement. Part of our task force is not just investigating; it's educating. It's attempting to set up prevention, not in just law enforcement in our world, but also in the community, reaching out. It's something that we've kind of embraced quite a bit, but I'll go ahead and start at the law enforcement aspect of it. In attempting to combat this type of the internet crimes against children, it is a growing trend. We initially started off from anywhere from a couple cyber tips without even going into being proactive, just a couple cyber tips in the beginning. Towards the end, we average between 12 and 20 cyber tips a month. And again, that's not the proactive side of it. We started off by trying, once we got our team running and working, we started to kind of department hop and start training other departments, such as Redlands PD, Ontario PD, City of El Monte. Various agencies would come to us so that we could kind of get them up to speed. When it comes to technology, obviously, a lot of us are out of the loop. We're still back to the old school law enforcement side. So trying to get that up to speed and understanding how to work cyber tips, which search warrants we need to write, et cetera, for our investigations, that is a huge task, and it is a lot of knowledge that needs to be known. Most of our investigation on the law enforcement side faces the sextortion, sexting, cyberbullying, primarily child pornography, and then also human trafficking, human sex trafficking. We also meet with on the other side is with our public, whether it's putting on presentations, teaching small presentations at schools, we engage in those. Currently, we've conducted 24 professional meetings with professional associations such as the grand jury. I know we met with yourself, sir, and we've put on 24 of those. And I believe it comprised of almost, I want to say 200 or 200 plus members. On the other side, we've also done a total of 21 separate meetings at schools that we've also engaged in. Basically get them understanding. We set up programs at the schools and try to get them to get a better idea, better knowledge about it. And at the same presentations at the school, we have their parents also come so they can kind of get some idea. We show them how to set up different safety things, on the kids' phones, the parental controls, understanding the parental controls that are on the gaming systems, the laptops, to try and prevent them. And then also we further it with the online safety, not just for their children, but for themselves in regards to identity theft and stuff like that. Within just this last year, just to understand how the growing trend of this. In the last year, our task force alone conducted 217 investigations. We completed 74 arrests. Right now, we're at 100% conviction rate. We have 2 of our cases have gone federal, and they're federal filings for them. But most importantly, and this is the most important part of all this, wipe all the arrests away and all the presentations, we were able to locate, identify, and rescue 13 children that were being victims of exploitation, sexual exploitation over the internet. I've been working this now for probably the last 2 years, 2.5 years, and the growing trend is just phenomenal. We've got a lot of the kids that are in the high schools that are sending out photos, and then that starts leading into, from that sexting to becomes the sextortion, where it's send me more, send me this, send me that. Individuals on the internet have got onto that growing trend, so they start doing it. You sent me this, if you don't send me more, we're going to go ahead and send your parents. I'll forward this to all your friends on your page. And it continues to grow. Just today, we had 2 more victims that we identified. What we're trying to do is collaborate, get with other agencies, trying to put together more of a module that we can kind of lean on each other and, I'll handle this presentation with these parents. Would you handle this one at this school? And generate some type of secondary agreement that we could get. We have an agreement with probation. A lot of the kids that they're not much of I wouldn't recognize them as a predator. They've stepped out of line. They don't really understand the depths. And we have an agreement now with probation where they're placed into certain, follow these programs. It's outside of doing more of a, sending them to court. We have an agreement with our Fontana Unified School District, and especially when it comes to these, when they come across the sexting and the sextortion, forward it to our unit. We specialize in it. We'll be able to identify who it is, and then we can work together with the school, whether it's going to be something that's going to be forwarded to court, be more of a, an arrest style, or it's going to be pushed back towards more of an educational. So a lot of the issues that we've come across with attempting to deal with combating this is, and for the other agencies involved, it's attempting to get them up to speed. the technology, the forensic technology that we need to investigate these, it's a huge burden. Technology is ever growing. We're always getting different types of encryption, hiding apps. It's also discovering the new social sites that they're going on. It wasn't 5-10 minutes on one social site where I created an undercover profile, and I had received photographs from various older men, and I had set myself up as a young 14-year-old girl. And it wasn't even, I don't even think I had a profile picture up yet. It's that predominant. So, but getting the technology, understanding, locating these social sites that they're going on where these predators are hiding out. That's a lot of the issues that we have. We have seen a drop in a lot of our cyber tips within our area based on our enforcement, and that's a positive. Even though the growing trend continues to grow, we kept it at a pretty good steady level, if not also dropped some too. On the separate side, we also reach out. We do it proactive. We do our undercover chats. We do place ourselves out there as juveniles. We do engage with these predators over the peer-to-peer networks, where we download this content from them, and then we investigate them and take them into custody and have them speak before the judge. So, and that's on a whole nother aspect of it, and that's ever growing also. I can tell you, to be honest, and not to get into our investigations at this point, today, if I had the personnel, I could probably serve a search warrant at least 18 to 20 homes today within this county of downloads that we have that we're investigating. It's just trying to catch up with the pace. We are getting so much criminal activity for us to conduct the investigation, serve the search warrants, take them into custody, do the interviews, triage the computer, the electronic storage devices. It's a timely process, and I don't believe, the county of San Bernardino, we need to, this district, we need to come together and come together with some type of format to try and combat this. And instead of us all working individually, try to come together and create something solid.
My colleagues have any questions here before we move on to the next panel? Go ahead.
Thank you. Dr. Manson, thank you for your articulate details about sextortion. It's something that I am passionate about as well, because I think that sometimes people don't take it seriously enough. This year I authored SB 500, which makes sextortion a felony. The governor signed it into law, and I would just be curious if there's something else we can do, and also Detective, if there's something else we can do to help you to do your job better. And I also wanted to know, thank you for rescuing the 13 children. Maybe they have a shot at a normal life. And what can we do in the legislature to do more on sextortion, help you to do your job more? So I'll let either one of you answer, or both.
I think the more that you support awareness in the schools, the better. I think National Cybersecurity Awareness Month is one of the best things we have nationwide. I would like to see that become embedded more into what we do in California as well. So perhaps when October is here, you can have more visibility of that event in Sacramento and also around the state.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Detective?
I would also agree with Dr. Manson. We do need a program. We need a program in schools so that these children and also their parents understand the depths of this internet. I mean, you're talking about dark web, we're not even there. We're on the web, and the web's dirty. And let them know, once you get that photo out there, it's there forever, and it's not, it's not just sent out to this person, that person. Once it reaches that web, it's on steroids. It's going. One aspect of it, we try to hit it from various aspects. One is the schooling, the educational aspect, not just to the kids, but also to the parents, but then also the law enforcement aspect. And then stepping outside of that, we attempted to engage with the sex registry, the new the assembly that went across, and it's a challenge. it's attempting to do that. I know the bail schedules for these individuals that we arrest, the bail schedule is very little. We're arresting these individuals, and their bail schedule is set up at $20,000. You know, in a lot of counties, if you arrest somebody that's unlicensed, it's a higher bail than this.
Wow.
So the bail schedules, it's very difficult because once they're in custody and we start doing our investigation, start finding different cloud services where they're storing these images, where they've hid them. A lot of times they get bailed out and they're able to delete those things before we can actually get to them. Also with, like mandated sentencing, it's really hard with AB 109, with Prop 47, with PC 4012, with these individuals, a lot of times, they may receive a sentence for them to be rehabilitated, but they're not really given the chance to get that rehabilitation, because if they're sentenced to a year, well, they're actually looking at 6 months, but during the process, they're out in 3. They've got a bracelet on and an ankle bracelet, and they're monitored from the house after 2 months. Well, they didn't. There's not much rehabilitation for that, and we find these individuals. We've actually arrested individuals that have been sentenced, served minimal time, came out. We've rearrested them for the same offense 2 and now 3 times.
Very good. Thank you very much. I sit on education, so I'll speak to the chair. I think the awareness is extremely important. And educating parents. I have 25-year-old twins, and so they're somewhat young, but I'm very grateful that they didn't have access to the internet on their phone until they went to college. But it's different now. So thank you very much.
Assemblymember, you had a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a couple of questions. First of all, I completely agree with you that we need to focus on education, both of parents and of students, about this problem, because even if we put as much resource as we possibly could into enforcement, we're still going to only scratch the tip of the problem with the enforcement side. So I'm wondering to the extent to which we need to make cyber awareness part of school curriculums, because it certainly seems like in the 21st century that it's a fundamental life skill, like balancing a checkbook, or being a good consumer. You need to know. Our children and our students need to know about the dangers of the internet. And I'm wondering if there's more we can do from a state Department of Education standpoint to encourage that kind of curriculum development.
I think there is a lot more that can be done, and I think the ability to partner with the different agencies that you have and the different educational institutions that I'm a part of is critical to that. So when we do Cybersecurity Awareness Month, I think the more that we are working with local schools on that, and I think the more that you're getting out into the field to support events like National Security Awareness Month is critical. It is hard to add activities to the school day. What I like about Cyber Patriot is that it's an after-school activity, like playing a sport. But I think that for what we do in schools to talk about physical safety, danger, stranger, and all the things to worry about in the physical world, we need to have as much emphasis as what you need to be aware of and protect yourself in the online world. I think parents are intimidated to an extent about this because, as Senator Levia mentioned, it's different when you grow up today. For the kids that grow up today, technology is like water. They live and breathe it. And parents have a very hard time understanding and keeping up, but it's something that we really need to help them with.
All right, thank you. And then I had a technical question. So one of the committees that I sit on is the Committee for Privacy and Consumer Protection. And an issue that is at the forefront of what we're doing is examining the interface between, on the one hand, people's right to privacy, and then on the other hand, the need for access to information on the behalf of law enforcement. So, for example, when are warrants required on cell phones? When can a personal computer be searched? Things like that. So I'm curious as to your experience with how encryption has evolved and whether or not encryption is an impediment to the investigations that you do when you're trying to prove that someone possesses material that they shouldn't possess.
They're probably one of our biggest heartaches. It's I'll go back to the privacy. There are certain ways that we do deal with it. There have been new case laws and things set in stone where, there's more search warrants. Now we have to sit before a judge, explain to them why we want to search this device, or even to the point now where we receive cyber tips, and when we get our cyber tips, you're not even allowed to look at the images. All you can do is read the actual tip that was written, and then based on that, you can write a search warrant, and then you're allowed to look at the images and determine whether or not it is, or actually read the content to see if it's actual, enticement for sexual acts from a juvenile, or, so the privacy stuff has been set up. It's been a change. It's different, but we go through the different protocols, and it seems to be working fine on getting access to those.
So have you had occasions where you served a search warrant, you got access to a device, but you could not actually extract any useful information because all the information on the device was encrypted?
Absolutely, yeah.
How often does that happen?
Weekly.
Really?
More often than it has in the past.
Yeah, weekly. There's times that we can attempt to talk to them and see what we can do. There's other other things that we do to search for passwords and stuff like that. But in a nutshell, if it's a good encryption, you're going to be locked out. Most of the brand new iPhones, the iPhone 10, that has a double encryption where without a passcode, you cannot forensically dump that phone.
Right.
I would, if I may, just real quick, and I want to stress kind of what Detective Hill said earlier. You asked kind of what you guys can look at from a legislator standpoint, and I would really encourage you to look at some of the changes in sentencing laws that have occurred over the past few years and maybe reconsider some of those. These individuals, there's absolutely, I'm not a psychologist, but there's absolutely a crossover and a parallel between people who are viewing this material and people who are manufacturing it and people who are crossing over into the actual assaults on children. We see it all the time in our cases. A lot of times, obviously, we have a unit that's just dedicated to the internet crimes, so we'll have detectives that will investigate a sex crime against a child, and we find out through those investigations that that person was manufacturing child pornography on that victim. So we have that crossover, and it happens. We've had cases where we've had a father, and these are people that live in our neighborhoods, trust me. They're people that are living next door to us. And so obviously if they're viewing this material, I'd say there's a grave threat to the children that live near these individuals. So like I said, the sentencing laws probably need to be reviewed. We had a case recently where we investigated a gentleman who was at a party, and I'll make it real short and sweet, but anyways, he was molesting children at this party. We were called in, we identified that he had some child pornography. We did some follow-up investigation and found out that, some more significant crimes that occurred against children. This gentleman back in 2014, or he had been a registered sex offender since the 90s, if I'm not mistaken. And in 2014, he was a resident of San Diego County and back and forth between LA County and San Diego County. But anyways, he was considered rehabilitated, given a certificate in a court of law, and taken off our sex registry base. So,
Why was he considered rehabilitated? Had he gone through a program?
you know what? I imagine he had at some point. I don't know all the circumstances other than the crimes he'd been convicted of were considered nonviolent offenses, child annoying, possession of child pornography. Again, nonviolent offenses.
I see.
So, so when I say annoy, molest, those are generally misdemeanor crimes. Those aren't considered sex assaults. So this gentleman had been registered as a sex offender. So at this party in Fontana that he was attending, basically, originally what we had on him was an annoying and molesting type offense with children, not necessarily a sexual assault. Well, Detective Hill and the rest of our team went through a bunch of his devices, which took several weeks, and identified child pornography that he manufactured. And basically, it was a business partner of his child that they had allowed him to watch and babysit. And you can only imagine that the photographs of this child and the types of things that she probably went through are, we don't even want to talk about. But I can tell you they were vile. And so this isn't something that was happening in the Philippines. this was happening in a neighborhood like yours or mine. But I know it's more common than you think. So I know that's just one example, but I can tell you there's probably many more out there just like them. So I'd ask you to just consider that when you talk about the legislative aspect. Thank you.
Well, thanks for your candor, and thanks for the work that you do.
Thank you.
And with that, I think one of the questions I was going to ask, I think it's already been asked, how we can help. And it's good that we have, obviously, a senator here with us as well. So obviously, both houses, we work together on that we can hear the issues here and hopefully come up with some ideas to give you some more tools in your box as you move forward in what you do. And I just had a quick question for Fontana. Before the formation of this group, how were these cases being addressed? Because you didn't have the personnel, so to speak, right?
Right, and it was kind of it was a toss-up. A lot of it was handed over to the county, the Assemblymember County Sheriff's Department. They conducted a lot of the investigations that they determined it actually fell within our jurisdiction. It would be forwarded and handed over to a general detective. When I took over the initial portions of this, I was a solo detective working, sex crimes, and I would get the cyber tips. And then as I started looking at them more, we started learning more, started learning how to investigate them better. We realized how large of the issue was. We took on a second detective, that wasn't enough. Took on a third detective, wasn't enough. Took on a fourth detective, and I handed out investigations today for our detectives to go ahead and start even more investigations that we got, and they just give you the look because they are 20 to 25 cases down.
Most agencies our size will handle it as a collateral duty. So, and that's kind of what we did as well. It's obviously become more advanced. We recognize it more because we have a unit solely dedicated to that. But, and that's why we get a lot of our local agencies that now come to us for training, and we try to provide that. Certainly funding to combat the advancement in technology is huge. We've even talked about in our organization trying to create a multi-jurisdictional task force within just our neighboring agencies to combat this type of thing. Obviously, that's going to require equipment. From our standpoint, just to clarify, I know, Mr. Rodriguez, you came out to our agency not too long ago, but LAPD serves as the warehouse for the cyber tips that come in from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And then what happens is tips that lead to Fontana or our neighboring area will then be sent to our detective unit, and then our detectives will follow up. These cases sometimes take anywhere from several weeks to several months. And you figure there's also that time delay where it's been going on for quite a while before we even get the cyber tip. So it's extremely time consuming, requires a lot of manpower just to serve the search warrants. A search warrant on a house for this type of crime generally will take an entire, could take anywhere from 10 to 15 hours just on the first day. And then you have all the follow-up that comes with that. So staffing's huge. Obviously, funding's required for that to try to combat that. But that's another main obstacle that we deal with. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I want to thank the first panel for your presentation. Look forward to working with you, continuing this dialogue. So I want to move on to the second panel, but before we move on to the second panel, I want to recognize Fontana Mayor Pro Tem Jesse Sandoval, who is here with us. Thank you for joining us as well, Jesse. Thank you. So with that, as our next series of presenters come up to the table, I want to again gain an overall understanding of their prospective department's operations on combating internet crime. Now I'd like to welcome our second panel, which consists of School Resources Officers Diana Hernandez and Officer Angela Torres from the Pomona Police Department, and also from the San Bernardino County Sheriff Department, Sergeant Michael O'Brien and Detective Kim Hernandez from the San Bernardino Police Department. You come forward. And Pomona, Angela, you can probably go first if you like.
Good morning, sir. How are you doing today?
Thank you.
Can you hear me okay? Okay. I believe we have a PowerPoint for our presentation. So again, thank you for having us today, and we really appreciate the time that you're taking on this matter, which is a very serious problem within our own community. And we're very happy that other agencies are here, especially the San Bernardino Task Force, and I did see the LA Regional Human Trafficking Task Force as well. And we've worked with them in the past, and we all have a very good relationship. As one of the other investigators mentioned earlier, it's very important that we all network together because this is a problem that crosses jurisdictions, crosses cities, and it's definitely important that we have a good relationship with each other. So one thing that we really want to address about the internet crimes involving children is that it begins at home for the most part. And that's because children are accessing the internet and social media through their computers, at home, at school, their personal computers, their tablets, iPods, cell phones. Anything that can get a Wi-Fi signal allows your child to access the internet and the world beyond. And when Dr. Manson discussed how the internet is just as alive and real for children as the reality and the world that we're living in today, I absolutely agree with him. This is something that we were not necessarily subject to when we were growing up, but it is 100% real to them. Giving a child a smart cell phone with internet and Wi-Fi access allows a child access to the entire world at the touch of his or her fingertips. Many parents do not know what apps their children have downloaded to their devices. Many parents do not know the functions of these apps or how their children use them. There are many apps that were created innocently that predators and pimps and sexual exploiters use to access our children that are innocent apps, but because of chat functions and the ability to communicate and send photographs, they can be used for abusive means. And many parents do not review the content of their child's cell phones. They don't actually know what their children are doing online. They don't know the quality or the content of the conversations that their children are having or what they are looking at daily. Children are smart. They constantly adapt their behaviors to outwit their parents, and this is easy since most parents do not use apps or technology as often as their children do. And where there is a will, there is a way. So some of the types of internet child abuse we encounter are blackmail, harassment, sexting, child pornography, and human trafficking.
Good afternoon. I am Officer Diana Hernandez from Pomona Police Department. I'm currently assigned to the Youth Services Unit as a school resource officer. Pomona Unified School District contracts with Pomona Police Department for 2 SROs. SROs provide a minimum of 4 days a week per officer within their schools. We serve as a resource to the district, employees, administrators, faculty, security, students, and parents on law enforcement-related issues. We conduct preliminary and follow-up investigations of crimes that occur on and near district campuses. That includes students traveling to school before and after. We routinely patrol on and around Pomona Unified School District campuses, and we're to be present during school activities and special events. We do offer a couple of after-school programs to the students of our district. One of the programs is Cops for Kids, which targets children between the ages of 9 and 13. It's a 10 to 12 week after-school program designed to build and instill respect, discipline, and responsibility within the youth of our community. Cadets meet once a week for 90 minutes, and it's led by Pomona Police officers and as well as our explorers. Cadets participate in physical training, drill, and classroom instruction. As part of that instruction, we do teach about internet safety, bullying, those type of topics. Community service day is also required for these cadets to graduate. The other program we offer is our Explorer program, which is for students ages 13 and a half up until they reach 21 years old. They also meet once a week for a 3-hour session, and they are taught drill, respect, responsibility, self-defense, report writing, and classroom instruction. As part of their classroom instruction, they also receive internet safety classes. It's designed to mentor teens and young adults as well as teach leadership skills. Explorers participate in ride-alongs, community events, and compete in competitions with other Explorer posts. Cyberbullying is the use of internet, cell phones, or other technology to spread hurtful or embarrassing pictures and messages about another person. Cyberbullies use social media, blogs, and texting to harass and spread hurtful messages and pictures about other people. Cyberbullying is on the top 5 offenses most experienced by teens. Most schools track cyberbullying. I know that our schools deal with this issue quite frequently. They deal with it on a weekly basis, and obviously they investigate the most serious incidents and determine which ones need to be brought to our attention, and that's when we get involved. Cyberbullying, sexting. Sexting is sending sexually explicit photographs, messages, and video in a text message, email, or through social media. Children cannot legally consent to sex or distributing sexually explicit photographs. Children often do not comprehend the seriousness of this action or that it's a crime despite their consent to share the pictures. Once law enforcement is notified of internet-related crimes, it's often too late to undo the damage. So once it's on the internet, we can deal with the situation, but there's no way for us to possibly bring all of those images back. There's no way to prevent the sharing of the images or the content that's been posted online. The best way to prevent internet-related crimes is through prevention and education. Some of the challenges are often the victims of these crimes are considered the suspect because they're not old enough to consent. It's often embarrassing to the child who's fearful of getting in trouble at school and at home, and this results in an uncooperative victim. Prevention through education. Schools and parents should be educating children on internet safety to include the safe use of cell phones, apps, emails, and text messaging. Schools should provide informational meetings to parents on the latest trends involving internet and social media with a focus on the latest apps being used by children. Local law enforcement should support school districts by attending the informational meetings and providing information to parents and students which relate to consequences of participating in internet crimes. Parents need to have an open communication with their children. They're encouraged to have the passwords to their children's cell phones and social media accounts. Parents should also consider the age and maturity of their children when allowing access to the internet and social media. So again, our belief is the most effective way is really by educating the parents and getting them involved, as well as the students. But students are well aware of how to use all of these apps and social media. It's really the parents that need help. So the more that we can educate them, the better that they'll be to keep an eye on their kids and prevent things like this from happening.
So I'm going to address some of our human trafficking issues. The Pomona Police Department tracks reported incidences of human trafficking and the commercial sexual exploitation of juveniles. The Major Crimes Task Force, which is a task force of 10 individuals, leads daily enforcement and patrol for victims of human trafficking. We also regularly lead operations regarding human trafficking. And due to the recent legal changes, we as law enforcement have evolved in how we view human trafficking and crimes against children. Prior to 2015, we actually were not tracking children who were being recovered because that's when the legal change occurred. So teens who were arrested for prostitution or loitering for prostitution-related offenses were arrested. So since then, we've actually made 14 recoveries. So those are juveniles under the age of 18 that we've located in the city of Pomona who were being sexually exploited, and we were able to reunify them with their families. We have information campaigns to educate Pomona citizens about human trafficking and sexual exploitation. This includes public forums and area commander meetings. We issue press releases and use Nixle about human trafficking operations and rescues taking place in the city of Pomona. We conduct street-level investigations to identify and rescue juveniles being sexually exploited and trafficked. We also do internet investigations to rescue minors being sexually exploited via online websites. Internet investigations with an emphasis on addressing child predators seeking sexual relations with children via online websites. So networking to keep children safe. We are a small agency, but we work very closely with a lot of the agencies around us to have a bigger impact in the human trafficking world. Some of the teams that we work with are the FBI SAFE Team, the Los Angeles Regional Human Trafficking Task Force, San Bernardino County Human Trafficking Task Force, local police departments, LA County Probation, San Gabriel Valley East AB 109 Team, Department of Homeland Security, and our local nonprofits and shelters. Here is a worksheet on some of the apps that we frequently encounter during our investigations. This will be Facebook, Instagram, Kik, WhatsApp, Tagged, Snapchat. Basically anything that can be used online to communicate with is something that we need to get to know. And that involves us going to social media classes put on by other law enforcement agencies, as well as educating the public. And this is one of our biggest challenges, is always trying to keep up with the technology, because there's always a new app, there's always a new way to use it, and the children know it before we do. So we have the challenge of keeping up with them, and however they evolve to use something beyond how we know to use it. We increase community awareness through education campaigns. We give presentations at our area commander meetings and public forums, through the Pomona Police Explorers, Cops for Kids. We also do presentations at high schools and through our press releases. So some of the things that we recommend in order to combat this problem is some type of social media 101 class for parents and students. We would like to work with Pomona Unified School District to create such a curriculum for them. This would involve social media training for parents regarding current social media trends and apps. This goal is to empower parents to have more tools to combat potential problems related to their children's internet use. Help them at home, help them start the conversation and know what they're looking for. Ask intelligent questions of their children who, as we all know, teenagers don't really want to have these conversations with their parents, but we want to empower parents to ask good questions. And then we want to create a system to track these incidents and crimes and work more closely with the school resource officers and PUSD staff to educate parents and students. Lastly, the first panel addressed this. Criminal charges is not always the way to go with these misguided youths. And when we, as police officers, come in and take these reports, a lot of times we're working with the penal code. We would like more freedom, perhaps with education codes, to empower administration to take more appropriate, to give more appropriate consequences to the crimes that are occurring. These teenagers are not necessarily ill-intentioned, and it's not always good to criminalize this type of behavior. I think an understanding perhaps with probation or with the schools might be more appropriate for the level of behavior we're looking at in many of these cases involving sexting and bullying, not necessarily with human trafficking. But since this is a very big issue, one thing that would help us are more education codes that directly deal with this.
Thank you both for your presentation, and we'll move on to San Bernardino. Go ahead.
Sir. Again, thanks for having us here. Do we need this? Yes. I'm Sergeant Mike O'Brien with the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department. I'm currently supervising a regional human trafficking task force that was recently put together. We just came in to our own in May of this year. Our task force consists of officers throughout the county, and it also includes members of San Bernardino's Unified School District Police, as well as federal task force members. Currently, we have been addressing the human trafficking aspect from a more street level than in-home. Our actual targets are out in the street. It's the victims who have already crossed over, and a lot of them have already left home. Our mission is to rescue victims, and with a primary focus on juveniles. Since May, and we've rescued 30 victims directly from traffickers. Of those 30, 19 were juveniles under the age of 18. We work as a cohesive unit. Again, we work with other units. We've been throughout Southern California. We worked with other task force. We've been as far up as Central California, following up on leads and cases. We also have suspects that are coming from out of state. With that being said, San Bernardino County is a very large county, as we all know, and keeping up with human trafficking is as hard for us as it is for any other agency. And a lot of it has to do with technology and the costs that are incurred when we're trying to keep up with it. We did put together a short presentation that we'd like to show you. Hopefully it'll answer some of the questions you may have. And I'm going to have Detective Kim Hernandez go ahead and take it from here.
I'm Detective Kim Hernandez. I'm a member of the San Bernardino Police Department, but I'm assigned to the San Bernardino County Human Trafficking Task Force. I have worked in the past with Officer Angela Torres from the Pomona Police Department, as well as Detective Jeremy Hill from Fontana, because our cases do overlap and cross paths. We just want to talk about human trafficking in San Bernardino County specifically. I can also speak for LA, Orange, San Diego, and Riverside. My cases have crossed into all of those locations. I've had cases tried in all 3 counties. Members of our team have had cases tried in all of those counties. We wanted to talk about a proactive approach with potential victims. A lot of that has to do with internet safety and online safety, as well as training and awareness. We do believe that there should be a required training for mandated reporters, and we believe that there's some legislation changes that could be successful. Every city in the county is affected by human trafficking. Every city in every county is affected by human trafficking. Every household can be affected by human trafficking. Because of the internet, it makes it a open source for victims, for potential victims. It doesn't matter what the background of the child is. It doesn't matter what the background of the parents are. We have children that come from homes that are broken, that are together. If there is access to social media, then there is a possibility of becoming a victim of human trafficking. Any city with a motel has a human trafficking problem, and that is due in large part to the internet. The most common types of human trafficking that we see specifically in San Bernardino County is street, motel, brothel, and massage parlor. Street prostitution is a common problem in this county of San Bernardino still to this day. The problem is also in the motels, which is usually the internet escort advertisement business. Brothels are also becoming more prevalent. There are locations that are only opened purely to be responding to escort advertisements where people can go purely just for dates. They don't even disguise themselves as massage parlor. And then we have our more well-known massage parlor human trafficking issues. We have seen an exponential rise in human trafficking cases due to the internet availability. Sex buyers can connect to their victims through the sex advertisements, through online programs including Backpage, Night Shift, City Vibe, Humaniplex, Echo, escort reviews, eroticmugshots.com. There's 30 plus escort advertisement sites that have been identified by the FBI as being used by sex buyers to connect with victims. Pimps and traffickers can also connect with victims through these same escort advertisements, as well as through social media. That can happen through Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and also dating sites such as Meet Me, Seeking Arrangements, Plenty of Fish, Tagged, and others just like it. Anyone can form a log on to any of those. I have rescued many juveniles. Our team has rescued many juveniles that have had accounts through Plenty of Fish that they had created on their own by just bypassing the "Are you an adult?" questions. It provides anonymity, Sex buyers that may have been afraid to drive out to the street to pick up a prostitute can now connect easily through the internet with confidence and confidentiality to be able to connect with a prostitute and be able to pay for sex the way they were hoping to. And this provides an open door for victims that are young. In escort advertisements, you'll see fresh in town, new face, many other key words that are known in the underground subculture as meaning young or minors, because there are sex buyers looking for that age group. We also have a problem with gang members that have moved towards this as their crime of choice rather than narcotics or weapons. A person can be sold over and over again, whereas a bag of methamphetamine or a gun can only be sold once. This is a very good asset for these criminals because they're able to sell the same product over and over again and continue to make $1,000+ a day. And that is $1,000+ per girl per day. And that can happen on any city at any time. We are changing the mindset. Prostitutes are victims. We're still trying to overcome the mindset where people believe if they did not get held at gunpoint and dragged into a car, that they were not human trafficked. Just because these traffickers use manipulation to get the girls to get into the car with them to have them go out and work as a prostitute doesn't mean that it's okay. And that's a mindset that we're trying to change among administrators, first responders, assemblymen, senators, politicians, and everybody alike. Prostitutes don't want to be there, and that's the mindset that we need to change. The proactive approach to victims in the San Bernardino County, the District Attorney's Office has what's called the CASE, a Coalition Against Sexual Exploitation. The CASE program is a multidisciplinary approach to victim management. It includes the District Attorney's Office, the Public Defender's Office, Department of Behavioral Health, Children and Family Services, and the Probation Department. They all work together for the good of the victim. Unfortunately, this program was completely fed through arrests that were made for prostitution. Since the change in legislation, there are now no minors arrested for prostitution. Therefore, the feeding of potential clients into the CASE program has slowed down tremendously. Over the time of their inception, though, they've helped over 170 youth. Data collection awareness during missing persons investigations can help us to identify potential victims. Currently, we have a missing persons form that we use, and every city in the state has the same form, and we all collect the same data. I believe that a change in that form could help us provide us with additional information to help collect that additional data. It already has the correct boxes for social media and things such as that, but potential risk for human trafficking, I believe, through an awareness to the first responders, they would learn what they're looking for, which may send it to a human trafficking task force that may be able to look at the report and see if we need to be involved. We need a collaborative program that will bridge the gap between the at-risk youth, which is CSEC, commercially sexually exploited children, and available resources, prevention, and intervention, such as CASE. Because of the change in the law, we don't have that feeder program of them being arrested for prostitution, then being able to place them on probation into the CASE program. Because we don't have that gap, we need to find some way to bridge that gap. One of the possibilities that we talked about and that we thought might be of use is the possible use of incorrigible youth, which is a program used for truancies and for curfew violations, but girls gone or leaving into the life to be involved in human trafficking are doing both of those things. And there might be a possibility for making some sort of allowance for that to be also girls that are involved in human trafficking are not incorrigible, but they are violating those laws, which may be able to place them into the CASE program so that they can get the help that they need and the resources to the parents that are needed. Training needs to happen for first responders. Everyone has kind of talked about training, and we have created a public service announcement in our county. We're also creating training for our advanced officers, training as well as for our academy trainees for police officers so that we can have first responder awareness. But it's not just these first responders. It's also EMTs who will make contact with the girls when they're working as a prostitute and they fall out because they have not eaten or have not drank water in days. They come in contact with the girls also who are working on Figueroa, Western, G Street in San Bernardino, Holt and Pomona, and many other locations in Orange County, San Diego, and LA. We need to make sure that first responders, including nursing staff, EMTs, ER doctors, school counselors, school employees, police officers, CPS workers, and other mandated reporters know what they're looking for to identify a possible victim of human trafficking. And that will help to identify those victims to get them the right support and services that they need, as well as the law enforcement backup of possible potential prosecution of criminals involved in these crimes. If we identify these victims, we can provide them with the immediate assistance and resources. School districts, we have been working with the school district. We've had a very proactive approach in our county, working with the San Bernardino Unified School District. They've been very proactive in their offering a body to the task force, as well as they're looking for training to go out into the schools. There's training that's already been put in place by organizations such as Thorn, which is Ashton Kutcher's program, as well as the Family Online Safety Institute, which already has programs specifically designed for school districts to be sent out to children and parents alike. These programs are already in place and can be used by school districts for initial processes of getting started with these programs so that they can immediately start responding to these threats. And I believe that the teachers and the school employees need to be aware of what they're looking for. There's simple things like the girls being on their phones all the time, changing their clothes to being more provocative, missing school days at a time. There are definitely things to look for that would identify the girls as starting down a path of being into human trafficking, and that's male or female. We believe that there should be some changes in legislation. One of the things that we looked at was SB 1322. It definitely had an excellent motivation in decriminalizing prostitution for minors. You're creating an environment where they're treated as a victim rather than a suspect. That was absolutely the right choice because they are victims. However, it had a very flawed application. There was no safety net or protocol in place on what to do for these girls or these boys once they're not able to be arrested for it, and no forced resources to be put into place. The other problem is that when the law was created, the solicitation of sex with a minor should have been made into a felony. If we truly believe that these girls are victims, the solicitation of sex with a minor should be a felony. If a sex buyer is answering an advertisement that says Fresh Face or New in Town, where they know that they are seeking a young girl, and we can make the elements we can do proactive cases where we can say that we're underage. If they are actively seeking an underage minor, then the crime should be a felony. It should not continue to be a misdemeanor, which is normally dropped to a disturbing the peace, and they're released with 0 to no punishment. There's no registration as a sex offender, whereas most human trafficking crimes that involve minors, there is registration as a sex offender. I believe that we could change that loophole, and we could be looking into tackling the demand of the sex buyers that are looking for minor children. Another thing is the PC 18622, which is the gang enhancements. Human trafficking related crimes, including pimping and pandering, are not considered as part of the Dirty 33, which gives us a gang enhancement. These crimes have not been typically added to that list. However, we are able to get the gang enhancement if we can prove that it was at the duress or fear or force by the gang. However, I believe it should be immediately a part of and be a predicate crime, because the gangs are turning towards this crime as a way of making a large amount of money, and often do it together and are making a lot of money based on living this lifestyle and subculture of pimping. AB 403 is the reclassification of treatment facilities. This was Assembly bill passed this last year, which has changed group homes into residential care. Unless there's a certified need or clinical need, the children will not be placed in a group home facility. They'll be placed in a residential care facility. This is a good idea. Once again, it's got good motivation. However, the girls are not considered as being a clinical need because their behavior issues revolve around the crime of human trafficking, but doesn't address the needs that they have because they've been sexually exploited, as well as as I believe it was called before, the vile acts that have been committed against them that may not create a clinical need, but they need trauma-informed care. So I believe that there should be a separate need or a separate identification for those girls and maybe a separate form of treatment for them. Group homes is not a good place because they do recruit each other to continue to stay into the life. However, they need to go to places where they will get the trauma-informed care that they need because they have been repeatedly sexually exploited. Some of the new laws need to include harsher penalties and punishments for repeat offenders. Multiple convictions should probably raise the amount of sentencing that they have. Currently, prostitution is an example. I've already talked about prosecution being a felony with a minor, but prostitution, sometimes men and women are arrested repeatedly for prostitution with no increased punishment. If there are multiple offenses for the same thing, we can deter those people from continuing to do those crimes by having harsher punishments for multiple convictions. The same as we've done in the past with theft. Other states have changed to multiple convictions of prostitution becomes a felony. So that's the end of our presentation. There's the biggest focus I believe that we believe, and I think that everyone has spoken about, is that it comes down to the awareness and the training. First responders, parents, school officials, everybody needs to be trained so that everybody can be aware of what the internet has in store for their children and not be closed down about it. You cannot sit and say, I don't understand how that works, so I'll just let my child do it. I have my children show me their apps on their phones and how they work. Every parent can do that. And that's something that could come out of all of the training and awareness that could be provided through the schools and through other programs, including through the education code as well as through probation.
I want to thank you for that presentation. And there's a variety of ways we can look at it. You talked about the education component. And one thing I think about, we're talking about, a lot of it starts at home, right, with the parents, the mother and father. But I think about some of these students who live with their grandparents or their aunts and uncles who may not know a lot about the internet and what goes on with that. So that's kind of another challenging aspect of it as well. But I want to thank you for everything you do and continue to do that. Obviously, in our capacity, we're looking at how we can help you, and we're getting a lot of good advice and things we can do up here. I just had one question for Pomona, being that a lot of issues we have regarding the internet and everything that we're doing. Does Pomona have the capacity, you think, to have its own internet type of crime task force? I know a lot of it comes with funding, right? But I don't know what the makeup of the department right now, if that's something maybe looking at doing. And I don't know, Angela, if that's something you can answer or someone else. I don't know. It just kind of something that came to thought.
It is definitely a goal of ours to get to that place one day. Funding, training, there are many challenges that come with that, but it is definitely our goal to get there.
Okay. Well, like I said, I want to thank you for being here as well, and thanks for your presentation. Look forward to continuing this dialogue with you both and whatever we can do to help as well. So with that, we'll go ahead and move on to our next and last panel. Our last panel is members from the Pomona Unified School District. We have Oliver Anaka, Public Information Officer, and Jennifer Wagner, Educational Technician. From the Ontario Montclair School District, we have Steve Garcia, Director of Child Welfare and Attendance. We will hear from Pomona Unified first. So with that, you folks can go ahead.
All right. Assemblymember Rodriguez, my name is Oliver Yannock. I'm Public Information Officer for Pomona Unified School District, and I'm joined by my colleague, Dr. Jennifer Wagner, who is our Director of Educational Technology for PUSD. We were given a scope of questions, and we're just going to cover those in the form of testimony for you, and Jennifer will start us off with the first two.
Good afternoon. I'm going to start with the first question, which is on what are educational measures we use to educate our faculty, staff, family, etc., on the risks of the use of internet searching. And I want to start with our Internet Safety Initiative. Our district has a district-wide initiative where we provide a baseline amount of required lessons around internet safety, networking websites and chat rooms, cyberbullying awareness and response, and student digital footprints. And this is based on the Protecting Children in the 21st Century Act and the Children's Internet Safety Act. So SIPA, I'm sorry, I got that a little bit wrong. But with these, they are baseline lessons that that each of our schools are required to teach every single student. So the goal is that we are doing our due diligence to provide this baseline amount, and what we have our Common Sense Media is where we get most of these lessons, which is a very a great resource for not only educators but also families and parents around information about keeping children safe online. And so with that, we also include more optional resources for our schools. So this is a start. We actually are certified as a digital citizenship district through Common Sense Media for the last few years, which is a great accolade. But as director of educational technology, I do feel, and hearing all of the police officers today, we definitely have a lot more to do in this realm, and I hope we do get to partner more with Pomona PD around the new apps that are always coming up. I was quite excited to try to partner with them. In addition to that, we do faculty training for our teachers that provide the internet safety lessons to students. And we try to provide a lot of parent education, and we do that both at site level and at the district level. And recently we also have trained parents on internet safety, our parent leaders at our school sites that then go back and train their parent peers and colleagues. So I think the challenge with that, though, is we're only getting those parents that are coming to us, or we try to push out a lot of information, but that's only as good as those that are actually reading it or trying to acquire that information. So that's I think a challenge that I'm hoping we can close that gap, but I'm not sure exactly how we can do that. So again, working with our local partners is probably the best way to do that. The second question is around what are our current preventative measures that we utilize to block websites, hacking, phishing, spam, ransomware, etc. And so we have a pretty rigorous content filter that blocks malicious websites. We have student accounts that we have different access levels for student staff accounts where we block our student accounts from outside emails. We have a very robust Google Apps environment, but that's only within our school district. Our students cannot share or do anything with our Google Apps outside of our school district. So we try to keep them safe in that way. We log all of the logins and accounts, so if there is a cyberbullying, we can often find out who started it and with what website, what app. We have networks that are divided and firewalled to try to reduce the risk of hacking and of phishing. Most of our internet connections are blocked against malicious software, and so we really try to minimize that risk of direct electronic communication of outsiders to our students. We do, one detective was talking about, encryption, and so we actually have security certificates in place where we decrypt and then encrypt again because outside websites require the encryption. So we're like kind of doing that middleman so that we're trying to make sure that we're filtering and we're constantly searching for issues and problems and challenges that our students face with the internet today. In addition, we take student privacy very seriously, and especially with the advent of AB 1584 just recently. We're a member of the California Student Data Privacy Alliance, so we're working with our digital vendors, our education vendors, to ensure that all of our student information and data is kept private and not shared. So we're working diligently in that respect as well. One addition that we have started just recently is we're beginning to roll out our one-to-one device initiative where students are now taking school district-owned devices home in certain schools. And with that, we have in place a network filtering software called Securely, and that is put on devices so that now not only are we trying to filter within our own network in the district, we're now filtering per student access to any of our district-owned equipment. And with this, we're filtering for the same types of things like bullying, self-harm, social media. The one thing that I didn't say before is all of social media for students within our district is blocked. The challenge of cell phones, though, is very real, and it's something that schools are constantly combating, because that's, even though we say if you're using your cell phone, you have to be on our district network, you have to log in. Right. Do we really know that they're really doing that? That's a challenge. On all of our district-owned devices, we know we're filtering. On our district-owned devices that we're sending home even, we are restricting the apps that they can download. They can't just go anywhere. We're restricting, peer-to-peer is not accessible to students, but again, it's within what we have the access to do. So those personal devices, that's a whole nother story. So the last question for me is just our current and future plans with implementing technology. And thanks to Measure P, our Pomona community passed last November 2016, we are now able to implement our Future Ready Promise Schools initiative, where the vision and the goal is to provide a device, that access to a device to every student in every school. And so these devices, it's for deeper student learning and for our digital learning initiatives. This is going to provide a lot of access and equity to our high poverty students, which we have quite a lot. So that is our vision, and it is about education and educating around being safe online and educating around how to use technology in a way to learn and not just as for social media and gaming, etc. So that is our goal, and we've started that, and it's very exciting. We're in 7 schools, one-to-one, and we are continuing to roll out.
And I'm just going to take the last 2, and in the interest of time, Assemblyman, I'm going to raise it about a 30,000-foot level and try to give you the vision and scope of what we're doing here in Pomona Unified School District. When we received the email from Mr. Andrew Avila, I took the email to our superintendent, Mr. Richard Martinez, and discussed it at length. And we, first of all, want to commend you for having this, what we consider to be a courageous conversation. Because as Jennifer just mentioned a moment ago, here in Pomona Unified School District, we have a very, very bold endeavor. And that endeavor is bridging the digital divide. But I need to put some context around this. I need you to understand that when we talk about Pomona Unified School District, we aren't relegated to Pomona, the city. Our academic service area includes Diamond Bar, parts of the Diamond Bar Walnut area, Phillips Ranch, which as you know is a part of Pomona, but to give you some demographic context, and all of Pomona. So while there is high poverty here, you also have to understand that when the community invested in Measure P during the last election cycle, $300 million bond campaign with a $50 million ed tech set aside, what we essentially promised to this community within our entire academic service area was that we would prepare students for the jobs of tomorrow that have not been created yet. It's a very bold endeavor. It doesn't matter the economic status of the child in the home right now. We still, as educators and as an educational institution here locally, have that responsibility. So before we deployed this one-to-one, which we're in our first phase right now, we had to have very serious thoughts and considerations about safety being number one. So I want to touch on a couple of the questions that were asked and wrap it up by sharing how we're doing that with our one-to-one. Your office asks, what are current available resources in helping a child who may be experiencing abuse or exploitation over the internet, either at school or at home? with our one-to-one deployment, and I want to start back by rehearsing that the investment by the community for a school bond, it only needs to pass by 55%. We passed by almost 80%. So that's an investment in Pomona Unified School District by the community. And we started the conversations with that. We said, with your investment, here's what we're doing with these educational devices. You may have heard Jennifer mention that apps, the downloads cannot be done on our devices. We have that right because that's the only way to our ability and within our purview that we can limit a lot of these incidents that take place. By the way, let me just interject this footnote. Anecdotally, most of the cyberbullying that takes place, and this is an important note for all the parents here, takes place between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Because most of the devices, be them smartphones, computers, laptops, you name it, are essentially portals into one's household. So as a part of the work that we've been doing in Pomona Unified School District, we've gone out to churches, we've gone out to community groups, et cetera, engaging in dialogue around best and most responsible uses, not just for our devices, our Chromebooks that are going home, but for the devices that have been gifted to the students for their birthdays, for Christmas, et cetera, the smartphones, the tablets. We inform parents, yes, that's their device and you've given that to them, but this is your house. So those devices have to be charged. Let them be charged in your room, away from them, because again, if you view this as a window or a portal into your household, you can close your window in terms of safety by ensuring that you know how that device is being used during times when the child should not be on the device. So in accordance with AB 1432, district employees are mandated reporters and have a duty to report suspected child abuse to CPS and local law enforcement. PUSD has counselors for students in all grades and also referral services to our family support services to address student or family issues. You saw a few of our very noble police officers and detectives that were just here a moment ago. We have an amazing relationship with them. I see many of them, probably more than we should, given the instances that occur within our academic service areas, but we're working collaboratively. The phase that we are in right now, and I agree with the recommendations that were provided, a massive education effort is needed, and Pomona Unified School District is but one voice. And again, that's the reason why Superintendent Martinez, our cabinet, and the rest of us so commend you for having this conversation. Briefly, because I want to be cognizant of the other panel member. You asked, students can also be bullied and abused by their classmates and peers over the internet. How does your school district address these sorts of scenarios? Well, I want to piggyback on a recommendation that was made here before with regards to, I believe it was the penal code or criminal charges that they try to find to remedy these situations versus ed code. We would welcome the opportunity, and we had a meeting with, I believe her name is Shanna, with your office and with Paula. We'd love to work with you so that we can revise some of these things to be better fits, and I think that you will find it will be well received by school districts throughout the state of California, because that's very much needed, and I welcome the representative from Pomona Police Department to join in on that conversation because it's very necessary. Board Policy 5131.11, Bullying Prevention, affirms that every student has the right to a safe and secure school environment, free of humiliation, intimidation, fear, harassment, or any form of bullying behavior. Bullying means, just for the record, systematic and chronic infliction of physical or psychological distress. Cyberbullying is committed by means of an electronic act, that is text messaging, sound, image, or other social network posts. How we're addressing this at PUSD is we're taking a very proactive approach with what we call PBIS programs. And for those who maybe are not in the in the educational setting, that's positive behavior intervention systems. So rather than really focusing on what's wrong, we're really applauding what's right, and we're encouraging that behavior. And we're starting it at the very primary levels. So we're planting the seeds early. So not just viewing the internet or text messages as something that's inherently bad, but if you're going to download an app, what is the use, what is the intent of that app, and focusing on that and teaching them what to be aware of so that it's second nature for them before they get to the point where they are possibly a victim of being exploited or harassed online, etc. Lastly, We use a few programs, Capturing Kids' Hearts. We work with Kaiser Foundation and Rachel's Challenge presentations. Rachel's Challenge has to do with the Columbine incident. We showed it at many of our schools and then engaged in the dialogue and had counselors available for the students because the detective from San Bernardino, I forget her name, I believe it's Kimberly, just mentioned something that's really, really important. We have to make sure that there are trauma-informed techniques a part of these conversations because our students deal with a lot of that on a daily basis. So carrying those techniques into this conversation is critically important. And I will stop there in respect of the gentleman.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Steve Garcia. I'm the District Director for Child Welfare Attendance and Records for the Ontario Montclair School District. And one of the casualties of being last is that almost everything everyone's mentioned is in my presentation. So not to repeat too much, I want to tell you briefly of some of the things that we're doing to protect our kids and families and of course, our community and educate our community about, of course, the internet and social media and that whole cyber world that is so broad and vast and it used to be called in the 90s the information superhighway, which now is filled with side roads, dirt roads, dead ends. I mean, it is a web of so much that I think we are constantly working as a school district and of course in partnership with the two police agencies that we work with, of course, is Ontario Police Department and Montclair PD. They've been extremely instrumental in working with us, especially with issues on the internet, whether it's a crime between kids or with adults and so forth. They've been extremely responsive. So we've created a partnership with them because, again, we don't have all the technical expertise. As much as we try, we're always going to be a couple of steps, if not more, behind what kids do. Because every child that's in school now grew up not knowing life without the internet, without social media. And as phones become more sophisticated and the parents buy them those phones, we're still lagging behind, regardless of how much efforts we try to do. So I think at the end of the day, what we try to do is parent awareness, community awareness, and educating our kids about the appropriate use and to stay away and avoid inappropriate behavior using social media, the internet, phones, and everything that's electronic in the world, of course. And of course, some of those baseline safeguards that we all have to do, which is I'm drawing a blank here, but the Children's Internet Protection Act of 2000, which is SIPA. And of course, the more broader legislation for the federal government was the Neighborhood Children's Internet Protection Act of 2008, which tells us that we need to educate minors about the appropriate use of the internet and social media and everything the electronic that they have at their disposal, especially not only at home, of course, but of course at school. And just like we do the safeguards regarding the Chromebooks and make sure that they're monitored, all our internet systems, all our technology at the school district is filtered, of course, blocked, and constantly monitored, not only for our students, but of course for our staff members, because anything the staff uses, of course, kids, is the property of the school district. And so there's a constant monitoring and the hardware and the investment to make certain that everything is used properly and that teachers and staff members, administrators are trained to catch things that are not correct, that if kids are misusing. A lot of them is human interaction, not only just monitoring technology, but also their behaviors when they're in the labs, the computer labs, if they're using any kind of technology in the classroom. It's also that astute and aware staff member that needs to report and see things that they consider that are suspicious as well, especially if you think they're interacting between them in a violent way, like cyberbullying. And of course, we have all our school districts have board policies in place for cyberbullying and any kind of inappropriate use of technology. But again, it's about that parent and community awareness. And now that we've researched, and I'm working with my superintendent, we're looking at there's gaps, of course. No school district is perfect. And we're looking at a better outreach to our parents, especially our parents. And Ned, you talked about grandparents and about some of our not all our kids are with their parents, and they may be with only one parent, or they split time. And as you know, when kids are moving around because of maybe dysfunctional homes, there's a lot of movement. And so with so much movement, there's less supervision as well. And so, but it seems that no matter how many hardships, maybe financial, the families may experience, the child seems to always have a phone. And again, it's like part of their body. It's an appendage on their physical being. And so we understand that. And so we are looking at how better to educate our families on how to educate them to look at apps and so forth. And so we do have some parent meetings that we have at the different schools. But again, as we learned, and I'm certain we know, seems like the same good parents seem to go to the same meetings all the time. It's those parents that don't go and reach out. The parents that don't respond are the ones that we need to reach out to. And I don't think OMSD is doing a thorough job, and we are admitting it, because we have many parent engagement groups. We have many opportunities for parents to get involved. But if you go to these meetings, you'll see sometimes the same parents that tend to go seem to be vocal and actually very interactive, and actually they're the ones that are very concerned about the community, which we applaud and want them to be there. But we want to find those alienated parents that work 2-3 jobs or are not always the best maybe role models to their kids as well. So I think that's the plan that we're going to create just through this research, and I really applaud you, Assemblyman Rodriguez, for bringing us to come and speak a little bit, because with little research, we found gaps in our own program. Every child in our district, of course, and I'm certain also Pomona Unified, parents have to sign the acceptable use agreement, okay? It looks something like this, okay? And if you receive federal monies through E-rate, it's called, and of course the Federal Communications Commission oversees that, all our kids have to sign it, and parents have to sign it and agree. And so we were learning that maybe not all the schools are doing a great job in every classroom. So every kid, regardless, gets one of these, and now it's in this booklet with other signatures and approvals parents have to put that they recognize and they approve that certain policies exist, and that, this is like a group of forms that informs them on different laws and rules and things that we have in place, and that they can either agree or disagree. Well, we've included the acceptable use permit in there to make certain every child gets it, okay? Now, my concern is, does every parent read it? Or are they just signing away? Because we've tried to condense a 2-page form, and, parents are busy and they've got a stack of things to do. But I think that's where we're also going to do is have these meetings to truly inform parents and truly get those parents that are not always maybe attuned to what their children are doing to make certain that their kids are making good decisions. And of course, we heard all the testimonies from law enforcement and all those kids that go astray or are lured into, sex trafficking and human trafficking and on the internet and may get involved with an adult to do, of course, some unspeakable acts. That's our biggest fear, okay? And one thing we were discussing this morning in a meeting regarding some of the things we were going to present today is we were looking at the different types of kids out there, okay? You have the techie savvy kid, okay? The one that can we actually had a 5th grader hack a classroom technology room, okay? Really, he did it. He did it on his own, okay? And, okay, that's something, of course, to undermine the security of the school or the grades and personal information maybe. But the astute kids, they also know where danger is, and they know to avoid certain danger. But what about that vulnerable child who's looking for attention, just like kids go and join a gang or they're going to, involved with a negative group? Well, that's what the internet also can substitute that the need for attention, for praise. And so, again, those are the kids that are most vulnerable. And those are the kids that always are sometimes quiet. You don't know who they are. Because, you always find out something happens of a kid. What, that kid? I never knew that kid was capable of that. Or, oh, she was always quiet, or he was always quiet, was always into himself, looked a little depressed, but we weren't sure what was going on. Those are the kids that we fear are most vulnerable to the internet, to some of these sexual predators that are out there. And so, of course, some of the steps we've taken is of course, these parent meetings that we have. But again, we want to make sure we need to reach out to those parents who don't attend and those that are most removed and alienated from our school district and with the lives of their children. We are having a workshop jointly with Chaffey Joint Union High School District, because we're not a unified school district. Ontario Montclair is a K-8 district. And so Chaffey Joint Union, we combine our efforts with a lot of community outreach, because many of our, in our community, if you have a fifth and second grader, most likely you probably have a high schooler as well. So we are having a presentation about the latest trends in what adolescents are doing. The biggest part is social media, and what are the apps, at least the ones that we know today, this hour, and that'll be Tuesday at 6 p.m. at the Chaffey Joint Union High School District Center office, which is on Euclid and 5th Street. And it's open to the public, and it's from 6 to 7:30. The Sheriff's Department is doing the presentation, a gentleman named Clark Morrow, and he's very good. And he researches daily what the kids are doing and how kids hide apps behind apps and hide information. And, God, it's just endless. So with that, I'm just going to not do the other things that I think everybody presented, many things that we are doing. But again, I think our biggest effort is outreach to our parents and the community.
And with that said, I just had one question, probably for both districts, if we can kind of make it kind of brief, because I know we're a little over time. What resources do you guys have to help a student who's been a victim of human trafficking? Just curious out of curiosity.
Well, I can tell you, our district, we've invested in counseling centers. We have a program called Family Solutions and another one called Family Collaborative Services. And there we have caseworkers, therapists, and social worker interns who respond to things like that we put like on a crisis mode. We also have a crisis response team. Our own district has its own. Then from that point, that they pass it on to our county level, which is the CRT, which is a crisis response team from the County of San Bernardino. And so for those immediate responses, we do have counseling, and we do have people that will respond immediately that are trained case managers and therapists and social worker interns.
Okay.
And that's pretty standard with the school districts. What the gentleman just described falls under our Pupil and Community Services Division with round-the-clock counselors. And what most people don't realize is while the school day may be, from 8 to 3 p.m., many of us on cabinet, our superintendent, you name it, we're getting calls on the weekends, in the evenings, middle of the night, whereby that team is being dispatched to address a lot of the issues that were discussed here today. So again, in closing, Assemblymember Rodriguez, very courageous conversation. It's really important that it's had, and certainly hope that there is some meat to this in the end that will certainly benefit the students that we serve each and every single day. Thank you.
And with that said, this was our last panel. I want to thank you both for presenting your expertise on what you're doing in your districts, and thank you both for coming up and being part of this discussion as well. With that said, we'll go ahead and move to public comment. At this time, I would like to invite any members of the public to address the committee. If there's any members out there, come forward and I guess to my right, the podium here, and you'll have 3 minutes per person to talk about any of your comments or concerns. So with that, you can go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair, Assemblymember Rodriguez. The committee has come forth to speak to us regarding this matter. To me, it's extremely important. My name is Salvador. I'm a resident here in Pomona, and I have a 15-year-old child. And I battle this day in, day out. So it's not a question, it's more of a statement, or could be a question. Would it be possible to introduce legislation that mandates for this phone applications, and I say phone because this is the vehicle that I fight the most, for the application creators to create a banner whereas when a child or a person gets into this application, a banner pops up, just like the pop-ups that we see in our computers, that addresses the child, not in the sense of, are you an adult? More of, and there was a phrase that was given to us by Detective Torres, I think it was, where he mentions the consent of sharing the picture is a crime, somewhere along the lines. So maybe, kid, consent of sharing the picture is a crime. Something that can make it personal. I just feel that by children having to answer the fact that whether they're adults or not, that puts it removes them. I feel that it removes them from the situation that's happening versus, hey, I'm talking to you. You are a child. It is against the law to share those type of pictures. Something along that sort. And I don't see why we wouldn't do it. I'm sure that we're going to receive some pushback from these companies, but we do it with cigarettes. We do it with food. We do it with services rendered. I'm a real estate broker, and I have to disclose that every time that I speak to someone regarding real estate. Why not put responsibility on them? I mean, it's good that we're doing it, and I'm very thankful to that. And I'm very thankful to our police department that they're very they're very engaging in these matters. But it would also be good to put some type of responsibility onto the creators of these applications, because they turn a blind eye. Well, ultimately, they know that this is happening, and they just let it be. So again, in my opinion, it's just a matter of just creating some type of policy that, if not a federal, maybe a state level, that mandates them to have some type of label on their application. I go into Kik. As soon as I open Kik, it brings up a banner, and then they can swift it away. I'm an adult, I don't care. Swift it away, then I just start using the application. But as a child, at least it puts that little seed in my mind. Hey, I'm a kid. They're talking to me, and if I'm going to share this, I'm going to get in trouble. So, and that's it. Well, thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you. Is there any other member who'd like to come on forward and?
Good evening, Chairman Rodriguez, members of the panel, and members of the public. I have a couple of comments to bring up that could possibly be questions as well. I heard some of the law enforcement members speak about services on social media that are encrypted. What is it that we can do legally, through legislation or otherwise, to combat the issue of criminal activity occurring through the use of end-to-end encryption services? What can we do to effectively cut off criminals from those services without affecting the civil liberties of the public? And the second point is, what can we do to educate kids growing up through the K-12 system to responsibly use social media rather than blocking it altogether? I would put forth the suggestion that perhaps blocking it altogether could be counterproductive and could actually create a hand-in-the-cookie jar situation where kids want to defeat the blocks simply because there's a block. What can we do about those two issues?
Okay, with those questions regarding that, we can definitely look at that through my office and have more of a discussion in my office about those types of ideas as we can move forward and see if that's something we can explore on making a legislation with that. So obviously, I have my booth out in the front. We can talk to my staff after that. We can take that more in depth and go from there.
Because my worry is that through these end-to-end encryption systems, all sorts of criminal activity is hidden. But the only problem is if we mandate that a backdoor goes into some of these applications, the consequences could be much further reaching than just law enforcement. So there is a balance that we need to find through legislation in order to effectively combat all this criminal activity going on online. And how do we educate these kids to understand the difference between what's criminal and what's acceptable behavior online? So those are the couple of issues that I think are going to become very relevant, if not now, then within the next year or so, or sooner.
Okay. Thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you.
Any other members of the? We have someone else.
Alice R. Gomez, and I am a resident of Pomona. First of all, I'd like to say, Assemblyman Rodriguez, that this in itself is perfect for the community from the standpoint of the networking with the police department, with the community, within the school district, to bring something to you and for you to hear, which it's quite evident you are listening to the people here, all of them. I am a grandmother that has a grandchild, and my grandchild does not live with me, but has on occasion. So I'm not the parent, so there is a difference in how I raise my grandchild in compared to her mother, who has a different view on the phone system. And I see things that I don't feel that are appropriate, and to try and get my granddaughter to look at that. So when you mention children being raised by others, or it's difficult. You walk that fine line of how you care for a child. And I know that the district has the promotores that go out and speak to parents within the community in reference to issues. I'm glad that, and when I say district, Pomona, that they're doing that as part of it. But to me, the overhaul aspect of communicating and networking, and not through necessarily the internet, but on the one-on-ones such as this, where you have community speaking up and young youth even talking about some ideas, because some of the youth have ideas there that are far beyond our scope of the elders. And I consider myself an elder. I graduated a long time ago from Gary High School. So some of this is new, but at the same time, I'm willing to learn for the protection of my child and grandchild. So I really do appreciate this, and I appreciate the invite as far as a resident and a grandmother. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members? We have one more person here, I think.
Well, I have to piggyback on everyone's gratitude towards the activities we've been involved with tonight, the video presentations and the verbal discussions on the matter. I'm a longtime Pomona resident, had 2 homes here, old mobile home. I now have a nonprofit Taekwondo school at the village at Indian Hill, and we teach youth the fundamentals of self-defense as well as good courtesy and behavioral attitude items. So we have a vested interest in our community. I've got 2 high school graduate students, a daughter and a son from Pomona here. And my point that I would like to bring out is that as a California State of California employee from the Department of Consumer Affairs after 30 years state service, I investigated a lot of consumer complaints, and it was during the period of auto repair complaints, where everybody has a complaint about auto repair. It's like you don't want to tell anybody like you're a doctor. Everybody's got an ache or a pain. But I handle a lot of complaints and a lot of cases. And what I saw tonight and what I heard was that there were a lot of non-law enforcement cases being handled by our local officials. And I would make a suggestion that in order to get them in tune and having the time and the parameters of which their designation is of assignment, that the California State Department of Consumer Affairs, which handled at one time over 22 departments within California's consumer protection agencies, everything from the Toaster Police, which is the Bureau of Auto Repair and Electronics, the Bureau of Auto Repair, which I work for. We investigate everything from the Department of Insurance, Department DMV, and it goes on and on and on and on and on. And I would suggest that maybe it might be considered to create an organization of cybersecurity bureau, and let Department of Consumer Affairs get the phone calls, have consumer service reps handle those calls, work those cases, deal with the two parties involved if there's a complaint against a particular person and there's a victim, and see if they can mediate and get it handled. And when they find that it is a law enforcement issue, it then be turned over to our law enforcement folks, and either the state attorney general handles it, like the case reports that I used to handle, or the law enforcement from the city and the county take care of it. So that's something maybe we can talk about, to maybe think about.
Definitely we'll look into it as well. Any other members of the public? I think seeing none, I want to really truly thank everybody for being here today and public participation. Obviously, like I said in my opening remarks, this hearing came to me when I did a tour with Fontana Police and their crime task force, and want to get a better handle and understanding of what's going on in our district. But if this is just in our district, it's a small snapshot what's going on throughout our state and reality in our nation, right? So bringing some good information to us forward. I know I had a couple of my colleagues here, but they had to leave doing their schedules. But definitely we'll continue to monitor this and work at how we can do to address some of these issues. Obviously, there's things we can look at doing for our legislative session that starts in January, and we'll be touching base with them as well, see what we can do. But really, I want to thank you all for being here and really want to hear your voice continue, not just today, but tomorrow in the future, because let's not just stop after this hearing today. Let's continue the dialogue and let's work on addressing these issues. And also, we got to be remnant that obviously we have a governor election next year, and maybe some things we can't do this year, but hopefully in the following year we can. But let's not forget about what we're here for, to take care of our future, and that's our children. So with that, thank you all for being here. And any questions and comments, feel free to reach out to my office. We're right out front and everything we do to help. Thank you. Once again, with that, this meeting is adjourned. There's a lot of good stuff here.